just need to cash my check, that's all. No,
Please, come on out.
I just want to do what's right for my baby. Lock the door. Tell him close the blinds.
We need to figure this out. I don't want you to get hurt.
I got put out today. We have nowhere to live. And that man robbed me. I need to put my gun. You want to kill me? You want to blame me for robbing this bank, and I didn't do it. You can't help me. Nobody ever helps me.
This is bad, Shania. This is not your average bank robbery.
This is about giving her a chance.
It seems like you had a lot to get over today.
She's sick. I just need to cash my check, that's all. No,
Please, come on out.
I just want to do what's right for my baby. Lock the door. Tell him close the blinds.
We need to figure this out. I don't want you to get hurt.
I got put out today. We have nowhere to live. And that man robbed me. I need to put my gun. You want to kill me? You want to blame me for robbing this bank, and I didn't do it. You can't help me. Nobody ever helps me.
This is bad, Shania. This is not your average bank robbery.
This is about giving her a chance.
It seems like you had a lot to get over today.
Friends, if you've ever felt like life just won't give you a break, if you've ever wondered how much one person can endure, then this is the video you need to watch. Today, we're diving into a powerful, heartbreaking, and eye-opening film, Tyler Perry's Straw, a Netflix original released on June 6, 2025. If you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe, because today's video is not just a review, it's a conversation about real struggles, silent pain, and the resilience of the human spirit. In this video, we'll talk about everything. What this emotional roller coaster of a movie is all about. Where you can watch it. Behind-the-scenes details. Pre-production, filming, music, post-production. The budget, box office performance, and OTT platform availability. And most importantly, the story, performances, and the truth this film dares to tell. We'll explore how Taraji P. Henson delivers a haunting and unforgettable performance as a single mother on the edge. We'll talk about how Sherri and Teyana Taylor bring depth to a story that will leave you in tears and reflection. Straw is more than a movie. It's a mirror to society. It's about how the world overlooks the cries of a woman who's lost everything, and how one day, life pushes her too far. So friends, I request you to watch this video till the end, because this is not just about cinema, this is about the realities so many live but few talk about. Let's begin. The story of Straw, 2025, unravels like a slow-burning psychological descent, intimate, raw, and agonizingly grounded in the lived reality of one woman's emotional implosion. It doesn't simply follow a plot, it follows a woman's unraveling. The film plays with linearity, not in the traditional flashback-forward pattern, but by crafting an unreliable sense of time that mirrors the mental disintegration of its protagonist, Jania, played with unfiltered emotional depth by Taraji P. Henson. The day begins like any other, but the edges are already fraying. Jania is exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, financially. A single mother, she's fighting a war on multiple fronts. Eviction notices on her door, a job barely holding together, medical bills piling up for her sick daughter, and the quiet, constant noise of being unseen by the world around her. From the outset, Straw refuses to give its central character a moment of peace. There is no pause, no room to breathe, and this claustrophobic pacing becomes the pulse of the narrative itself. The first significant turning point comes when Jania arrives at work, only to find that her manager has docked her final paycheck. The confrontation escalates. What was supposed to be her one small thread of stability quickly snaps. She storms out, but not before chaos erupts at the store. A robbery, a death, and Jania fleeing in a panic. But what's crucial here is that the audience never sees her clearly committing any crime. We're left to question her involvement, mirroring the ambiguity she feels herself. She ends up at a bank, desperate to cash her final check. What unfolds is not a planned act, not even an impulsive crime, but something altogether more haunting. An emotional collapse that slowly traps everyone inside the building with her. She's not there to rob anyone. She's not making demands. She's just trying to hold onto a shred of her life. But the world, as always, sees a black woman in distress and translates it as danger. Here, the film changes. Time feels distorted. Reality softens around the edges. The conversations Jania has with the bank manager, Nicole, played by Sherri, are strangely lucid and intimate. Nicole doesn't treat her as a threat. She listens. A sisterhood forms in the middle of a perceived standoff, as if the walls of the bank are keeping the outside world's assumptions at bay, allowing a quiet, rare space for one black woman to hear another. Outside, a negotiator, Detective Raymond, Teyana Taylor, tries to piece together who Jania is and what she wants. The tension isn't in gunfire or hostages crying for help. It's in the slow revelation of who this woman is, and why this day has broken her. As more about her life is revealed, her daughter's chronic illness, her alienation from systems meant to help, the dozens of micro-failures by society that brought her here, we begin to understand. Straw is not about crime. It's about collapse. Then comes the narrative rupture. The moment the audience realizes it hasn't just been watching events unfold, but watching a fractured perception of them. In the final act, it's revealed that her daughter Aria had actually died the night before. Everything since then, the work confrontation, the bank scene, the live-stream standoff, has been filtered through Jania's psyche, a woman who could not emotionally process that final, unthinkable loss. This twist isn't delivered with shock value. It's devastatingly quiet. It recontextualizes every moment that came before it. The tenderness between women in the bank, the surreal calm of the negotiation, the emotional disconnect in scenes that felt off-kilter. The story doesn't rewind. It fractures. And we, as viewers, are left in the same emotional freefall as Jania, questioning what was real, what was imagined, and what was simply too painful for her to face. The film's structure mimics trauma. It's linear until it isn't, grounded until it slips. Like memory under duress. Like a person trying to maintain control as their world spins out. And in that way, Straw doesn't just tell us about Jania's suffering, it makes us feel it. The pacing, the dissonance, The eerie calm all contribute to the psychological terrain of a woman gasping for agency in a world that has already made up its mind about her. There is no catharsis, no tidy resolution. Just a mirror held up to a system that allows people like Jania to slip through every crack until they break. The narrative itself becomes a form of protest, against assumptions, against linear storytelling that expects logic in a world that offers none, against the idea that breakdowns happen suddenly. Here, the breakdown is quiet, slow, and all-consuming. Straw is not about a bank standoff. It's about what happens when the world tells a woman her pain doesn't matter, until it becomes loud enough to fear. The characters in Straw are not simply roles. They are emotional landscapes. They don't function as archetypes or plot devices, but as vessels for pain, fear, love, and quiet rebellion. Each one feels lived in, burdened with their own invisible weights. The film doesn't give us heroic arcs or sweeping transformations. What it gives instead is something rarer. Emotional authenticity, the kind that reveals who a person becomes under unbearable pressure. At the center is Jania, portrayed by Taraji P. Henson with devastating vulnerability. She isn't written to be likable or heroic or stable. She's exhausted, angry, raw. And that's the point. From the first frame, she's a woman holding too much, and over the course of the story, we watch her arms begin to shake under the weight. She doesn't transform in the traditional sense, because the story doesn't believe in that kind of neat evolution. Jania's journey is about disintegration, not redemption. She doesn't find herself. She loses everything, piece by piece. Her job, her home, her daughter, and finally her sense of what is real. But through that unraveling, we see something more profound than transformation. We see exposure. The truth of her inner life, the wounds she's hidden, the history she's been forced to bury to keep moving forward. All of it spills out. Her motivations are not complicated. She wants to provide, to protect, to survive. And yet the world around her interprets those instincts as threats. This is where her characterization becomes both intimate and political. Her personal implosion is framed by a systemic refusal to listen, to care, to see her. She isn't crazy. She's cornered. Then there is Nicole, the bank manager played by Sherri. At first, she appears as a procedural figure, someone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But over time, she emerges as a counterpoint to Jania. Where Jania is unraveling, Nicole becomes a quiet center. Their relationship is the film's emotional spine. Nicole listens when no one else will. She sits with Jania not as a hostage, but as a witness. Their exchanges aren't built around negotiation tactics or hostage drama tropes. They're about recognition. Two women, both navigating the unseen labor of being black women in an uncaring system, finally seeing each other in full. Nicole doesn't have a traditional arc either. What she offers is stillness. Compassion. She allows space for Jania to express what she can't say to anyone else. And that space, rare, tender, and unforced, is where the film's deepest emotional resonance lies. In that vault, the two women don't just talk. They confess. They remember. They hold space for pain. And that emotional labor becomes a quiet revolution within the narrative. Detective Raymond, played by Teyana Taylor, brings yet another layer. She is the negotiator on the outside, the voice in Jania's ear, the person tasked with de-escalating the situation. But as the story deepens, it's clear she isn't just following protocol. Raymond is caught in the same system, but from another angle. She's trying to protect Jania, to keep the situation from spiraling into violence. Not just because it's her job, but because she sees herself in Jania. A black woman doing everything right and still being pushed to the edge. Raymond's empathy is not shown through speeches or grand gestures. It's in the way her voice softens during the call. In the hesitation before relaying demands. In the questions she asks, not about what Jania wants, but about what she needs. Her character arc is minimal in terms of events, but maximal in emotional context. She becomes a quiet bridge between the outside world and Jania's collapsing interior. Other characters, officers, passers-by, media voices, are intentionally thin, flattened. That's the point. The film shows how quickly people become one-dimensional when viewed through systems of suspicion. These background voices reduce Jania to a headline, angry black woman holds up bank. But inside that vault, we see the layers, the contradictions, the humanity that's invisible to the rest of the world. The brilliance of Straw lies in how its character arcs mirror the film's deeper themes. No one is fixed. No one is rescued. Instead, we are shown how trauma contorts people into versions of themselves that even they don't recognize. We see how relationships, especially among black women, can serve as temporary sanctuaries in the middle of collapse. We witness how empathy can flicker into existence in the unlikeliest of places, between a manager and a distressed woman, between a negotiator and a person society has already labeled as dangerous. The characters don't transform because the world doesn't allow them that space. But their interactions, their shared silences, their mutual grief, their unexpected tenderness, become the only form of resistance they have. And that resistance is what shapes the story, moment by moment, until the final emotional blow. In the end, Straw isn't about who these characters become. It's about who they always were, and how no one noticed until it was too late. In Straw, the performances don't just serve the story, they carry it. This is not a film built on action or spectacle. It is one anchored in silence, in micro-expressions, in the quiet devastation of ordinary people pushed past their limits. The cast doesn't perform for the audience. They live their characters. Every gesture, every tremble of the voice, every moment of stillness is loaded with emotional intent. And what unfolds on screen is not simply acting, it's embodiment. Taraji P. Henson as Jania Wilkinson delivers what may be the most quietly ferocious performance of her career. From the opening frame, she's a woman we feel before we fully understand. Her exhaustion is not cosmetic. It radiates from her posture, her breath, her distant eyes. What Taraji brings to Jania is not a loud performance, but an internalized fury. She doesn't have long monologues explaining her despair. Instead, her face tells you everything. A slight wince at a bill she can't pay. A moment of pause before she forces a smile for her daughter. These are the details that shape her character. As the film progresses, Taraji shows us a slow emotional corrosion. Not the theatrical kind. There are no screaming fits or melodramatic breakdowns. Her unraveling is measured, haunted, and most disturbingly, believable. In the vault scenes, especially opposite Sherri Shepherd, Taraji performs with a kind of cracked stillness. Her voice softens. Her eyes wander. Her thoughts scatter in real time. You are not watching someone act like a woman breaking. You are watching a woman being broken by life, and somehow, continuing to speak through the wreckage. Sherri Shepherd as Nicole is the film's quiet counterweight. Known more for her comedic work, Shepherd surprises with a performance full of restraint and deep emotional clarity. Nicole is the unlikely soul that Jania confides in. And Shepherd does something extraordinary here. She listens. And that might sound simple, but in a film like Straw, it's everything. She doesn't try to outshine her scene partner. She leans in, both literally and emotionally. Her eyes remain locked on Jania's, even when things get unstable. And as the story unfolds, Nicole becomes the emotional center of the film, a mirror to Jania's pain, someone who understands without demanding proof. Shepherd plays her with empathy, and beneath that, a quiet weariness that suggests her own burdens. Their dynamic in the vault, equal parts wary, maternal, and sisterly, gives the film its most intimate and affecting moments. Teyana Taylor as Detective K. Raymond steps into a role that could have been procedural and transforms it into something deeply human. From her first scene, there's an internal tension, not between her and the suspect, but within herself. She wants to do her job, but she also knows what the stakes are when a black woman is on the other end of a gun. Her voice during negotiation scenes is layered, assertive when needed, but always threaded with softness. Taylor plays Raymond as someone caught between systems, between the uniform she wears and the skin she's in. She communicates volumes through subtle shifts in tone, brief moments of hesitation, or a glance away from the press. She's not trying to save Jania for career points. She's trying to reach her, woman to woman, because she understands how easy it is to be dismissed and misunderstood. Sinbad as Benny provides one of the film's most surprising and nuanced performances. Known primarily for comedy, Sinbad slips into this dramatic role with worn-down gentleness. Benny, a former neighbor and longtime friend of Jania's late mother, is one of the only characters who tries to reach her before things spiral. His scenes are brief, but crucial. He offers small kindnesses, truths no one else will say, and most importantly, memory. He reminds Jania who she was before life bent her this way. Sinbad's portrayal is heartbreakingly understated, with a wisdom and sorrow that linger long after he leaves the frame. Rockmond Dunbar as Chief Wilson plays the embodiment of institutional response, calculated, distant, and more concerned with optics than outcome. His scenes with Detective Raymond are tension-filled, not with shouting but with the quiet frustration of someone trying to de-escalate in a system that doesn't care for nuance. Dunbar doesn't overplay this. He lets the indifference speak for itself. Ashley Verschure as Tessa George, a bank employee caught in the standoff, adds a layer of raw humanity to the situation. At first fearful, then increasingly empathetic, her shifting perspective on Jania mirrors that of the audience. She helps us understand how easy it is to judge someone in crisis, until you hear their story. Mike Merrill as Detective Grimes contrasts sharply with Raymond. He represents the default law enforcement response, brash, cynical, and always moments away from turning negotiation into violence. Merrill plays him not as a villain, but as someone who never learned to look beyond the surface. His tension with Taylor's Raymond elevates the emotional stakes inside and outside the bank. Glyn Turman as Richard, Jania's estranged father, appears in flashbacks and memory fragments. His performance is spectral, more felt than seen. He offers warmth in an otherwise frigid narrative landscape. The scenes between him and young Jania are brief but resonant, hinting at a familial connection long since severed by time, trauma, and silence. Charlotte Monique as Raya Dunham and Diva Tyler as Isabella serve as two of the bank's hostages whose emotional arcs, though secondary, reflect the broader impact of the day's events. Monique captures the anxiety of someone seeing her own fears reflected in Jania, while Tyler gives a grounded maternal presence in the chaos. Neither overacts. Instead, their fear and confusion quietly amplify the film's central tension. Every actor, from leads to supporting cast, contributes not to spectacle, but to substance. There is no moment that feels forced, no line delivery that breaks the emotional tone. Each performance deepens the narrative, enhances the mood, and brings weight to a story that refuses to sensationalize human pain. What elevates Straw is not just the script, or the direction, or the themes. It's the actors, those who listen as much as they speak, who hold silence like dialogue, who let themselves be vulnerable. And in doing so, they don't just play their characters. They inhabit them. Fully. Fiercely. Truthfully. In Straw, Tyler Perry doesn't direct with a heavy hand. He directs like someone who knows silence can be louder than screams, that stillness can be more terrifying than chaos. There's an almost haunted restraint in how the film is crafted. And that restraint is the tone. It's not just what Perry shows us, it's what he doesn't. What he holds back. What he lingers on just a second too long. The result is a film soaked in dread, but not hysteria, urgency, but not spectacle. This is storytelling shaped by emotional gravity rather than plot propulsion. The tone of Straw is that of emotional claustrophobia. From the very first scenes, Jania dragging herself through the bureaucratic routines of survival, the mood is heavy, unsparing. Perry doesn't introduce tragedy with a bang. Instead, he lets it creep in, minute by minute, frame by frame. The lighting is stark and cold, the palette leaning toward washed-out blues and grays, as if the world has drained of warmth. Even before the bank standoff begins, there's a sense that something inside Jania has already snapped. The world isn't waiting to collapse, it's already collapsed, and now the story is simply bearing witness. Pacing is key here. Perry plays against expectation. This is a film that could easily fall into the rhythms of a thriller. Countdowns, negotiations, police lines. But he refuses that rhythm. Instead, he slows time down. He focuses on Jania's breath, her trembling hands, the distant sound of sirens growing louder. The pacing traps us inside her head. We aren't watching a hostage situation unfold from the outside. We're inside it, feeling the weight of every second as it ticks by. And that temporal disorientation serves the film's emotional truth. When you're in crisis, time doesn't move forward. It loops. It stretches. It suffocates. The shot composition is deceptively simple. Perry favors medium and close-up shots, not for intimacy, but for containment. Characters are framed tightly, rarely given breathing room. Even when the camera pulls back, it's often through glass, through windows, security monitors, or reflected surfaces, reminding us that everything is being watched, judged, interpreted from a distance. Inside the bank vault, the camera often takes a fixed position, making the space feel even smaller, more suffocating. As Jania paces or breaks down, we're locked in with her. There's no escape for her, and no escape for us. One of Perry's most striking stylistic choices is how he frames silence. Silence in Straw is not empty, it's saturated. Perry often cuts the score entirely and lets ambient sounds, the hum of fluorescent lights, the creak of leather, the buzz of a police radio, take over. These moments create a discomfort that can't be resolved with dialogue. It invites the viewer to sit in the tension, the confusion, the grief. Silence becomes a kind of spiritual architecture, where characters hide what they can't say aloud. There's also a brilliant use of perspective. While the film ostensibly unfolds in linear time, Perry punctuates the present with brief, sudden intrusions of the past. Memory fragments, sensory flashes, echoes of a life Jania lost long ago. These aren't full flashbacks, they're emotional ruptures. The color shifts warmer for just a moment, the sound softens, and then we're snapped back to the cold now. This technique isn't about exposition, it's about trauma memory. The past doesn't explain the present. It haunts it. Visually, Perry avoids glamour entirely. The world of Straw is relentlessly ordinary, uncomfortably so. The bank is beige and bureaucratic. The streets outside are hot and sun-bleached, pulsing with distant noise. Even the police command center feels underlit and overstressed. This realism grounds the story in something inescapable. It's not cinematic. It's familiar, which is precisely the horror. This isn't a world on fire. It's a world that always looked like this, but no one was paying attention. One of Perry's boldest choices is how he denies the audience conventional emotional release. There are no grand resolutions, no last-minute confessions that tie up the narrative. What we get instead is emotional accumulation. Every look, every line of dialogue, every silent beat stacks on top of the last until the weight becomes unbearable. And then, rather than exploding, the film implodes, quietly, devastatingly. Even the film's few dramatic high points are undercut by restraint. When Jania raises her voice, it's not a power move, it's panic. When the negotiators press her, the camera doesn't cut to the outside frenzy. It stays on her face, watching her try to maintain control. And when other characters, like Nicole or Raymond, connect with Jania, Perry doesn't use swelling music or slow motion. He simply lets it land. He knows the power of two women simply seeing each other. Thematically, Perry directs Straw as a confrontation, not just with personal trauma, but with the systems that ignore, misunderstand, and pathologize black women's pain. The style serves that mission, sparse, unflinching, empathetic without sentimentality. There are moments when it feels almost like a documentary, a slice of someone's life at its breaking point. But then Perry reminds us, through carefully constructed mise-en-scene, that this is also a story about erasure. About a woman slowly becoming invisible until the only way she's seen is through a surveillance camera and a breaking news chirun. Ultimately, Perry's direction insists that we sit in discomfort, that we don't look away, that we feel what's often ignored. He doesn't just show us Jania's story. He immerses us in it, its pace, its weight, its unbearable ordinariness. And by doing so, he doesn't just tell a story, he asks a question. Not, what happened to her? But, why didn't anyone see this coming? The answer hangs in the quiet spaces he's so careful to leave behind. In Straw, the cinematography is not just a vehicle for storytelling. It is the story. The camera doesn't observe from a distance. It participates, intrudes, suffocates, and sometimes retreats into silence, mimicking the emotional state of its characters. What unfolds visually is not just a sequence of scenes. It's a slow, deliberate unraveling of a life, captured through lenses that never let us look away. Camera angles in Straw do not flatter. They trap. Often, the camera hovers just above or slightly below eye level, creating an unsettling imbalance. In moments of tension, such as the initial confrontation inside the bank, the lens subtly tilts upward toward Jania, not to empower her but to magnify the chaos of perspective. She doesn't appear dominant, she appears disoriented, as if the space around her is closing in. In contrast, during negotiation scenes, the camera frequently adopts a high-angle shot looking down at her. This serves two purposes. It visually communicates her perceived powerlessness within the system and emphasizes her emotional isolation, boxed in by authorities who see her as a threat, not a woman. When Taraji P. Henson's character crouches beside the vault wall, the angle becomes almost voyeuristic, like we're watching her from a surveillance feed. That detachment is intentional. The world is watching, but no one is seeing. Framing in straw is consistently tight and constrained. There are few wide shots, and when they do appear, they are lonely. We rarely get an establishing shot of the bank exterior without tension. The story's world is not open, it's claustrophobic, systemic, institutional. Inside the vault, the frame often cuts characters at the shoulders, closing the visual field and suggesting that no one is operating at full strength. Characters are framed within frames, through windows, doorways, bars, and even the edges of picture frames in flashback scenes. These visual borders reinforce the theme of emotional imprisonment. Jania's world is made of cages, some physical, most psychological. Lighting in straw is deliberately devoid of glamour. The bank is lit with harsh fluorescence, casting sickly yellow-gray hues that wash out every face, flattening emotion. There is no warmth here, no sentimental glow. Even in moments of human connection, like Jania's whispered conversation with Nicole, the lighting remains utilitarian. This isn't an aesthetic choice alone. It's thematic. The setting doesn't care about their feelings. The lighting says, "This is not your story. This is a crime scene." But there are contrasts. In flashbacks, brief, flickering, incomplete, lighting shifts dramatically. A memory of Jania holding her child is bathed in amber sunlight, diffused through curtains, the shadows soft. It's a brief visual rupture, a life before. These moments don't last long, but when they arrive, they pierce. It's as if her soul momentarily emerges through the cracks of trauma. These warm tones don't just depict the past, they mourn it. One of the most visually striking moments in the film comes about halfway through the standoff, when Jania stands alone in the bank's main lobby, the vault door behind her. The camera pulls back slowly, almost imperceptibly, while the light flickers due to a short circuit. The frame becomes a diorama, a single woman in the center, lit from above like an exhibit in a museum, frozen in a moment of unraveling. She's not just standing in a lobby, she's suspended in time. You don't need dialogue. The visual does the emotional work. It says, this is what it looks like when someone breaks, and the world watches silently. Another unforgettable moment, the shot of Jania's reflection in a bank security monitor, grainy and green-tinted, her face distorted by digital static. It's symbolic. This is how institutions see her, through screens, stripped of dimension, reduced to movement and threat. The real woman is lost behind surveillance. And Perry lingers on it just long enough to let that message sink in. Cinematographer Michael Blackwood Green resists visual flourish unless it serves emotional resonance. In moments of Jania's psychological collapse, the camera sways ever so slightly, creating a subtle motion sickness that mirrors her inner disorientation. There's no overuse of handheld camera work, but when it appears, such as during her panic attack in the vault, it's jarring and effective. The scene becomes unstable not because of what's happening externally, but because the camera tells us this is what it feels like to lose control. The use of shadow is equally purposeful. During a crucial scene where Jania sits in silence, after realizing there's no way out without being either villainized or destroyed, the overhead lights dim just enough to cast her face into half-shadow. Her identity is fractured, part mother, part criminal, part victim. And the shot stays, lingers. No score, no movement, just her breathing. This is Perry's direction and Green's lens in perfect sync, capturing the quiet truth of trauma. Even outside the bank, the cinematography remains severe. Police lights bleed across the screen, not as excitement but as threat. They flash in cold blues and piercing reds, reflecting off windows and faces, smearing across the camera like blood. The viewer isn't meant to feel protected by their presence. We are meant to feel encroached upon. In the final act, when Jania faces the exit, hands trembling, we get a series of visual echoes from earlier scenes. The lobby's ceiling lights flicker again. The same camera angle from her first entrance reappears, but now she's moving slower, more fragile. She's not exiting into freedom. She's surrendering. And the shot composition tells us this without needing a single word. The light turns white-hot. The image overexposes. And the screen blurs, just for a moment, like the camera itself can't bear to focus on what comes next. In Straw, cinematography doesn't merely serve the story, it tells the unspeakable parts of it. Through angle, light, and frame, we are not just shown what is happening. We are asked to feel what it's like to be silenced, to be watched, to be judged without context. The camera doesn't save anyone. It simply bears witness. And in that gaze, everything is revealed. The editing in Straw functions like a slow pulse, steady, deliberate, unflinching. It doesn't rush to keep your attention. It dares you to stay still with it, to breathe inside the dread. Tyler Perry, working closely with his editing team, doesn't carve out a traditional narrative rhythm. Instead, he builds emotional rhythm, waves of intensity that crash and then recede, leaving you not with relief but with aftermath. This isn't editing meant to entertain. It's editing meant to witness. From the start, the transitions are raw and intentional. There's no flashy cutting, no stylistic flourishes designed to distract or dazzle. The film opens with hard cuts, punctuated silences between scenes that mirror the fragmentation of Jania's life. In one early transition, we cut from a soft, quiet moment of her preparing breakfast for her daughter to the cold, mechanical routine of a courtroom, a disorienting shift that lands like a gut punch. The edit doesn't cushion you. It drops you. And that drop, that emotional whiplash, becomes a recurring technique. Perry uses these juxtapositions to reflect the instability of living on the edge. How 1 second of normalcy can be shattered by systemic indifference. As the bank standoff begins, the film's pacing tightens, but it doesn't accelerate in the way a thriller might. It constricts. The cuts get shorter, but the shots don't lose their weight. There's no quick montage of SWAT team members or frantic news coverage. Instead, Perry gives us rhythmic restraint, reaction shots, silence between dialogue, people processing, not acting, reacting. That restraint is the tension. You're not watching characters figure out what to do. You're watching them figure out how to feel. The emotional rhythm is where the editing becomes most sophisticated. Perry and his team understand that trauma doesn't operate in a straight line, and neither should the edit. Key moments, such as Jania's escalating anxiety inside the vault, are punctuated with sudden flash edits. Single frames from her past, visual fragments like old home video clips or blurry memories of her child. These aren't traditional flashbacks. They come without warning, like emotional seizures. And then they vanish. These ruptures feel like the mind breaking open, mid-sentence. They do not explain, they expose. In scenes involving Detective K. Raymond, Teyana Taylor, or Chief Wilson, Rockmond Dunbar, the rhythm slows dramatically. Here, Perry lets the audience feel the oppressive weight of institutional inertia. The camera lingers on their indecision, their attempts to de-escalate, their subtle biases flickering across their expressions. These pauses are not dead space. They are emotional tempo shifts, a reminder that while Jania is imploding, the world around her is just grinding on, unhurried, unfeeling. What's remarkable is how the film withholds crescendo. Most stories like this build to a fever pitch. But Straw isn't interested in climax. Its tension lies in the denial of resolution. Key scenes that seem to be heading toward confrontation are edited in such a way that they collapse into silence, into delay, into characters simply staring at each other, unsure of what truth is safe to speak. The edit avoids release. Even when something dramatic does happen, like a gun being drawn, or a breakdown inside the vault, the moment is cut with unexpected restraint. There's no overexposure, no drawn-out tension. The scene plays out, and then it cuts. Quickly. Almost clinically. You're left with the emotional debris, not the spectacle. Then there's the use of time. Straw plays with duration like a character in itself. There are sequences that stretch on longer than comfortable. Jania pacing the vault in silence, characters waiting on the other end of a phone line, the slow bureaucracy of decision-making. These scenes test the viewer. But that testing is intentional. The real-time feeling builds pressure. Time becomes a kind of antagonist, unyielding, indifferent, cruel. And just when you start to feel overwhelmed, Perry cuts to a memory, a gesture, a face, offering no relief, just contrast. The film's final act is edited with an almost spiritual stillness. After so much emotional noise, the last 15 minutes are sparse, drained. The cuts come more slowly. The silences widen. It's not suspense, it's grief. Perry doesn't end the film with a rapid series of revelations or emotional speeches. He lets moments land with surgical slowness. The edit gives you time to feel the cost of what has happened. You feel it in Jania's face, in the stillness of the vault, in the muffled radio static as a decision is made elsewhere, by people who will never know her. Visually, there are editing motifs that repeat, returning camera angles, echoes of earlier compositions, facial close-ups that mirror earlier ones but with subtly changed emotions. These callbacks are never emphasized with music or narration. They're quiet, visual rhymes. They tell you, something has changed. Someone has changed. But no one's going to say it out loud. And that's the emotional weight of Straw's editing. It knows when to speak, and more importantly, when to stay silent. It trusts the audience to find meaning not in what's shown, but in what's held. In what's waited on. In what's not resolved. The rhythm doesn't just move the story, it feels like the story. Slow, aching, relentless. Like a heartbeat trying to keep going, even after the world has already decided it's finished. In Straw, the music doesn't operate like a guide. It doesn't lead you by the hand or tell you what to feel. Instead, it moves like breath, sometimes shallow, sometimes labored, often disappearing altogether. The score, composed with eerie restraint and tonal fragility, becomes an emotional undercurrent, never dominating, but always present in the places where language fails and silence grows too heavy to bear. From the film's opening moments, the musical tone is minimalistic, favoring ambient drones and melancholic piano motifs over sweeping orchestration. This is not a film scored to excite or manipulate. It's scored to haunt. The first scene, Jania waking early to make breakfast in a dimly lit kitchen, features barely more than a sustained low-frequency hum beneath the clatter of dishes and her daughter's soft voice. This subtle soundbed evokes the emotional tension of a life stretched thin. There's no melody, no rhythm, just a tonal fog, signaling a world in which the most ordinary acts are shadowed by looming uncertainty. One of the most poignant uses of music appears when Jania walks alone into the bank. The track accompanying this scene is deceptively gentle, a fragile piano theme composed of slow, hesitant notes with long pauses in between. It's not sad in a cinematic way. It's anxious. The gaps between the notes are as important as the notes themselves. The pacing of the melody mirrors her internal state, composed on the surface, but cracked just beneath. As the doors close behind her, the piano stops abruptly, cutting to silence. That cut is the real score. In Straw, silence isn't the absence of music, it's a statement. Throughout the standoff, the score becomes even more sparse. Instead of long pieces, we hear intermittent tonal cues, stretched chords, ambient textures, dissonant strings that rise like pressure in a sealed room. These soundscapes don't tell us what to feel. They create a space for emotion to live. When Jania experiences moments of panic, the music doesn't swell with urgency. Instead, it contracts, a thin, almost imperceptible violin tremor beneath the vault's air conditioning hum. It's claustrophobic, like the sound is coming from inside her skull. This is emotional sound design, not traditional scoring. But Straw isn't afraid of silence. In fact, some of its most emotionally charged scenes are completely unscored. A standout moment occurs when Jania, speaking to her daughter on the phone through a hostage negotiator, tries to reassure her. There's no music, just the sound of her breath catching, her voice cracking, the static buzz of the line. The absence of score makes the moment excruciatingly intimate. You're not watching a movie. You're eavesdropping on private devastation. And that silence holds more weight than any composition could carry. Later, when the story shifts into flashbacks, those brief glimpses of a life before, the score gently reintroduces melody, but it's never nostalgic. These motifs are rendered in muted keys, often slightly off-tempo, as if remembering itself is painful. There's a specific recurring motif, a 5-note theme played on what sounds like an old upright piano, slightly out of tune. It appears only 3 times, each tied to a memory of Jania and her daughter. The repetition is not sentimental. It's tragic, because each time you hear it, you know what she's lost, and what she's never going to get back. Another powerful sonic moment occurs near the film's climax, when a decision is made that will forever alter Jania's fate. As she stands facing the bank doors, hands trembling, the music introduces a low cello line, barely audible at first, that grows in volume, but never resolves. Instead of building to a crescendo, it fractures, breaking into dissonant, overlapping notes. The musical texture becomes chaotic but quiet, a sonic portrait of emotional collapse. And then, without warning, it vanishes. The silence that follows is oppressive. It leaves you suspended, breathless, complicit in the stillness. Composer and sound editor here make an intentional choice to blur the line between music and environment. Sometimes it's unclear whether you're hearing score or diegetic sound, a buzzing light, a distant siren, a heartbeat. These sounds bleed into the ambient textures of the score, creating a feeling of unreality. You don't know if the tension is coming from inside the scene or from somewhere deeper. That ambiguity enhances the film's core theme. The blurring of lines between victim and perpetrator, between justice and punishment, between identity and perception. The final scene of the film returns to the same musical motif used in the opening. A soft piano piece, but now slowed even further, stretched until each note feels like it's hanging on the edge of collapse. It's not resolution. It's reflection. There's no swell, no final chord. The music fades mid-note, as if it simply gives up. And that's exactly the point. This story doesn't end. It lingers. It echoes. In Straw, the music isn't a character, but it is a presence. It's the unspoken, the unshed tear, the tremor beneath the surface. It's not there to comfort, guide, or distract. It's there to listen, to hold the silences, to honor the ache, to speak for those who cannot. The score doesn't sing the story. It grieves it. Quietly. Relentlessly. Truthfully. Straw is not just a story about a woman caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's a layered excavation of systems, silence, and survival. Tyler Perry doesn't construct the film to deliver a single moral or message. Instead, he offers a bleak, tangled map of social truths and emotional scars, leaving the audience to feel their way through it, one painful revelation at a time. At its core, Straw is a searing meditation on the fragility of the human spirit in the face of institutional indifference. Jania, a single mother with a quiet resolve, is not a symbol. She is not a strong black woman, in the trope-heavy sense. She's exhausted. She's surviving. She's a reflection of the way poverty, gender, and race intersect not as plot devices, but as lived experience. The film uses her story not to preach but to reveal, a slow, devastating exposure of how systems built to protect can just as easily destroy. One of the film's most urgent themes is the weaponization of perception. The entire standoff inside the bank is not just a physical confrontation, it is a collision of narratives. To the media, to law enforcement, to people on the outside, Jania becomes a suspect before she ever says a word. She's coded as a threat by default. The film brilliantly captures this through surveillance footage, overheard radio chatter, and the quiet assumptions of law enforcement officers. It's never overtly racist or sexist, just deeply, silently embedded. That's the point. The real antagonist here is not a villain with a gun. It's the assumption that someone like Jania doesn't belong in a place of crisis unless she's causing it. The movie also takes a brutal, unflinching look at mental health, particularly within black communities. It doesn't sensationalize Jania's breakdown. It honors it. The narrative doesn't center on whether she's crazy or stable. Instead, it shows how trauma accumulates, not in one grand tragedy, but in 1,000 small humiliations, denials, fears, and pressures that add up until something snaps. And when it does, society isn't built to understand it. It's built to suppress it. But Straw doesn't stop at showing pain. It digs deeper, into the idea of dignity, how people cling to it, protect it, weaponize it, and ultimately lose it. Jania's actions inside the bank are never glorified, but they are contextualized. She doesn't demand attention. She demands to be heard. And even in the most volatile moments, her motives are laced with something deeper than desperation: righteous fatigue. The kind of exhaustion that comes from living in a world that only sees you when you're screaming. One of the most haunting themes in the film is motherhood under pressure. Jania's relationship with her daughter is not romanticized. It's raw, messy, tender, and filled with compromise. The film portrays motherhood not as a sacred identity but as a battleground, where love must fight daily against fear, poverty, and public scrutiny. Her child isn't just her anchor. She's her mirror, her reason, her one thread of sanity. When Jania breaks, we see that break as generational. Not a moment of weakness, but the result of a lifetime of holding things together alone. The film also reflects on the illusion of justice. The police officers outside, Detective Raymond, Chief Wilson, aren't written as evil or cartoonishly corrupt. They're realistic, measured, cautious, distracted, tired. And that's what makes the theme hit harder. The system fails not because of one bad actor, but because of a collective numbness. A slow-moving machine too big to turn around in time. The real heartbreak comes not from injustice, but from neglect. There are subtler themes, too. The erasure of women's voices in public discourse. The way trauma is passed through silence in families. The economics of empathy. How society decides who deserves compassion and who doesn't.
Perry weaves all of these into the background of the story, like shadows cast on a wall. You may not see them immediately, but once you do, you can unsee them. One of the film's most chilling sequences involves Jania remembering a courtroom hearing from her past. There's no dialogue, just images. A lawyer speaking for her, a judge looking away, her child being led out of the room. This scene encapsulates a larger message. Who gets to speak, and who is spoken over? The silence here isn't passive, it's violent. A reminder that the absence of voice is often the loudest condemnation. Straw doesn't force these themes into the spotlight. It lets you live with them. The storytelling is patient, sometimes to a fault, but that patience has purpose. You don't walk away with a neatly packaged lesson. You walk away with a weight on your chest and a mirror held uncomfortably close. There is one moment, brief, almost imperceptible, when the camera lingers on a news broadcast speculating about the standoff. The anchor uses language that strips Jania of humanity. Female suspect, unstable, armed. That moment echoes long after the screen fades to black, not because it's dramatic, but because it's normal. And that normalization of dehumanization is perhaps the film's most devastating and enduring theme. In the end, Straw doesn't ask, "What would you do?" It asks, "What have you ignored?" And then it waits in the silence, daring you to answer. The world of Straw is a study in restrained realism, a carefully constructed environment that feels less like a backdrop and more like a living, breathing extension of the story's emotional core. Tyler Perry's choice of locations, props, and production design doesn't shout for attention. It whispers, subtly anchoring the narrative in a space that feels both intimately familiar and quietly oppressive. The film opens in Jania's modest apartment, a space defined by scarcity and resilience. The worn furniture, chipped paint, and tightly packed rooms tell a silent story of a life stretched thin. This is not a set dressed to look impoverished for effect. Instead, it feels authentic, as though every mark on the wall, every faded photograph, and every mismatched piece of kitchenware carries the weight of history and survival. The apartment isn't just where Jania lives. It's where her struggles, hopes, and fears accumulate, making the environment itself a character in her story. Transitioning from this intimate space, the film moves to the bank, sterile, cold, and unforgiving. The vault where Jania finds herself trapped becomes a claustrophobic chamber that magnifies her isolation. The production design here is crucial. Harsh fluorescent lighting casts unforgiving shadows. The metal surfaces reflect cold blue hues, and the cramped layout is deliberately confining. The vault isn't a mere location. It is a physical manifestation of the barriers Jania faces: emotional, social, systemic. The stark contrast between her warm apartment and the cold vault heightens the emotional stakes and deepens the audience's sense of entrapment. Every prop is carefully selected to reinforce the themes of the film. In the apartment, simple objects: a child's drawing taped to the refrigerator, an old cell phone with a cracked screen, a faded grocery list, serve as silent markers of Jania's daily life and sacrifices. These details are subtle but powerful, grounding her character in reality and reminding viewers of the very real challenges she faces as a single mother struggling to keep her family afloat. Within the bank, props take on a more symbolic weight. The scattered papers, the blinking security systems, and the thick glass of teller windows all serve as barriers, both literal and metaphorical, between Jania and the outside world. These elements create a visual language of isolation and mistrust. The everyday tools of commerce become instruments of entrapment, underscoring how institutions designed to facilitate safety and order can become cold prisons. The supporting environments, the police command center, the street outside the bank, the courtroom scene in flashbacks, are rendered with the same attention to detail. The police station is cluttered but efficient, with whiteboards filled with notes, buzzing radios, and half-empty coffee cups that speak to the exhausting grind of law enforcement. The street scenes are muted and overcast, the gray urban landscape echoing the film's somber mood and the sense of alienation that permeates Jania's world. One of the film's most visually compelling choices is the use of lighting and color in production designed to reflect shifting moods. The warmth of Jania's apartment is tinged with earthy browns and soft yellows, evoking a fragile sense of safety and normalcy. In contrast, the bank's interiors are dominated by cold blues and grays, heightening the emotional chill and disconnection. Even small shifts in lighting, like the flickering of a fluorescent bulb or the subtle glow of a computer screen, are employed to emphasize tension and unease. The production design also subtly underscores themes of surveillance and vulnerability. Security cameras positioned in the bank's corners are never out of frame, silently watching, their presence a constant reminder that Jania's every move is being scrutinized. This feeling of being observed, judged, and misunderstood permeates the film and is visually reinforced through the careful placement of these props within the frame. In quieter moments, the simplicity of the setting allows the actors' performances to breathe, but when the tension rises, the environment tightens around them. The confined spaces, the interplay of shadows and light, the tactile textures of worn fabrics and cold metal, all contribute to an immersive atmosphere that blurs the line between setting and emotional state. Ultimately, the settings, props, and production design in Straw do far more than create a believable world. They amplify the film's themes of entrapment, endurance, and invisibility. Each location is a carefully crafted echo of the story's emotional landscape, inviting viewers not just to observe, but to inhabit the fraught spaces where Jania's life unfolds. It's a world painted in subtle, deliberate strokes, quiet but profoundly affecting. The dialogue in Straw moves with a quiet intensity, reflecting the film's deep-rooted commitment to authenticity over theatrics. It's not designed to dazzle with clever quips or memorable catchphrases. Instead, it inhabits the spaces between words, where what's left unsaid weighs as heavily as what's spoken. The script feels lived in, crafted to capture the cadence of real conversations among people who don't have the luxury of polished rhetoric or rehearsed defenses. It's sparse, deliberate, and often raw. Right from the start, the exchanges between Jania and her daughter feel grounded in everyday reality. Their conversations brim with a tenderness that's neither saccharine nor overly sentimental, but the kind of love that's both a lifeline and a burden. The lines here are simple. I'm doing this for you. Just stay safe, okay? But carry an emotional heft precisely because they feel earned. The way Jania repeats herself, stammers, or leaves sentences unfinished mirrors the real-world struggle of a mother trying to be both protector and provider in a world stacked against her. Where the script truly finds its emotional power is in the moments of confrontation, both internal and external. The dialogues between Jania and the negotiator are a masterclass in restrained tension. Each word is weighed, measured, sometimes clipped. Pauses stretch long enough to remind viewers that communication here is a precarious bridge between life and death. The negotiator's calm, procedural tone clashes with Jania's increasing desperation, creating a charged space where every phrase becomes a potential breaking point. Lines like, "You don't have to do this alone," ring out not just as negotiation tactics, but as haunting reminders of isolation. Beyond the central dialogue, the supporting characters' lines are carefully calibrated to reinforce the film's themes without tipping into cliché. For example, Detective K. Raymond's language avoids the stereotypical tough cop bravado. Instead, his words reveal exhaustion and conflict as he balances duty with empathy. His remarks, often quiet and underplayed, carry a bitter realism. We're trying to save a life, not win a case. These moments expose the moral gray areas the film inhabits, avoiding easy answers or black and white judgments. The script shines particularly in its handling of silences and subtext. Many scenes hinge on what's not said, glances, half-finished thoughts, or the weight of long pauses that speak volumes. This economy of dialogue makes the rare moments of verbal expression all the more impactful. When Jania finally voices her deepest fears and frustrations, the words hit with full force because they've been building beneath the surface. Lines like, "Nobody listens until it's too late," don't feel like scripted proclamations. They resonate like lived truths, echoing beyond the frame. There is a notable absence of sharp wit or humor, which aligns perfectly with the film's somber tone. Yet, in the few quiet scenes with Jania's daughter or with trusted confidants, the script allows for brief, gentle moments of levity, small jokes, shared memories that humanize the characters and prevent the narrative from becoming oppressively bleak. These moments serve as emotional relief valves, making the heavier dialogue stand out in sharper contrast. One of the film's most memorable lines arrives in a fleeting exchange during a flashback courtroom scene. Jania's lawyer tells her, "Justice isn't blind. It just looks away." This line lingers long after the scene ends because it crystallizes the film's underlying critique of systemic neglect and the invisibility faced by those like Jania. It's a moment of painful clarity wrapped in a simple phrase, emblematic of the script's ability to blend poetic insight with brutal honesty. Throughout Straw, dialogue is not about spectacle, but about intimacy and realism. The writing respects the characters' complexity and the weight of their circumstances, allowing the spoken word to feel like a natural extension of their inner lives rather than a performance. Every conversation is a small act of survival, negotiation, or resistance, woven into a fabric of sound that conveys more than just information, but the very texture of human struggle. In this way, the script becomes a powerful instrument of emotional storytelling, where each line, pause, and silence invites the audience to lean in, listen closely, and feel the unbearable tension of a life caught on the edge. It's a dialogue that refuses easy answers, but opens a window into the profound loneliness and resilience of its characters, making it both unforgettable and deeply moving. Straw occupies a space that feels both familiar and strikingly fresh, navigating the territory of thriller and drama without succumbing to the usual traps of either genre. At first glance, It might seem to follow a well-worn path: a tense hostage situation, law enforcement negotiation, and a protagonist pushed to extremes. Yet, as the story unfolds, the film deliberately subverts many of these genre expectations, turning the familiar into something much more nuanced and unsettling. Traditional hostage thrillers often lean heavily on action sequences, clear villains, and adrenaline-pumping confrontations. In Straw, the action is less about physical violence and more about the emotional and psychological unraveling of its characters. There are moments of tension, certainly, but they are understated and internalized rather than explosive or sensational. The film's suspense isn't built on car chases or gunfights, but on the simmering pressure of isolation, miscommunication, and systemic failure. This restraint challenges the audience's expectations. There is a lingering dread that grows from waiting, watching, and understanding rather than reacting. The typical antagonist role is notably absent or ambiguous. Jania is neither a villain nor a straightforward victim. This refusal to fit her into a neat category appends the genre's tendency to frame crises in binary terms: hero versus villain, criminal versus cop. Instead, Straw presents a more complex web of motivations, where everyone is flawed, constrained by circumstances beyond their control. This ambiguity destabilizes the audience's allegiance and forces a deeper engagement with the story's moral and social questions. Another way the film subverts genre conventions is through its pacing. Whereas many thrillers maintain relentless momentum, Straw opts for a measured, almost meditative rhythm. The moments of silence and waiting, negotiations held in tense calm, fragmented flashbacks, quiet domestic scenes, allow the emotional weight to settle and accumulate. This approach risks frustrating viewers accustomed to high-octane thrills, but it pays off by creating a thick atmosphere of anxiety and empathy. The tension isn't just about survival. It's about recognition and invisibility, themes rarely foreground in conventional thrillers. Humor is notably sparse, which aligns with the film's somber tone, but it's never entirely absent. Instead of broad comic relief, the film uses small, humanizing moments of warmth or ironic observation that feel organic and grounded. These glimpses of lightness aren't there to break tension, but to deepen character and reality, reminding viewers that even in the darkest times, life's contradictions persist. This subtle injection of humanity keeps the film from feeling one note or purely bleak. The film also introduces fresh ideas through its exploration of social and emotional landscapes that traditional thrillers tend to overlook. Instead of focusing solely on the external stakes, the threat of violence or escape, Straw delves into the internal stakes, the cost of invisibility, the crushing weight of judgment, and the delicate balance of dignity and desperation. This thematic focus broadens the genre, inviting viewers to consider systemic issues like poverty, race, and mental health as active forces shaping the narrative, rather than mere backdrops. Visually and narratively, the film resists genre cliches too. It avoids the trope of a dramatic big reveal or a neatly tied resolution. Instead, it embraces ambiguity, open-endedness, and complexity. Characters don't suddenly become heroes or villains. Their motivations remain layered, their outcomes uncertain. This choice challenges the audience to sit with discomfort rather than seek catharsis, which is a bold departure from conventional thriller arcs. In terms of balance, Straw leans heavily into drama, with suspense woven seamlessly into the emotional fabric of the story. The film doesn't pit action against character development, but allows them to coexist in a slow burn that feels organic rather than forced. Moments of tension arise naturally from character interactions and systemic pressures rather than contrived plot devices. The film's restraint enhances its impact, making the rare bursts of urgency feel earned and profound. Ultimately, Straw is a film that understands genre as a toolkit rather than a set of rules. It borrows elements from thriller and drama, but repurposes them to tell a story that is intimate, socially conscious, and emotionally resonant. It invites viewers to rethink what a thriller can be, not just a spectacle of violence and escape, but a quiet reckoning with the forces that trap us in unseen ways. This reimagining of genre conventions gives Straw a distinctive voice and a haunting presence that lingers well beyond its runtime. Straw pulses with the urgent heartbeat of contemporary social realities, threading its narrative tightly into the fabric of issues that resonate deeply with today's cultural and political landscape. The film does not wear its messages on its sleeve or serve as a didactic lecture. Instead, it embeds these themes organically within the characters' lives and the unfolding crisis, creating a powerful interplay between personal struggle and systemic forces. At its core, the film confronts the harsh realities faced by single mothers navigating poverty, marginalization, and institutional neglect. Jania's story is not isolated. It is a reflection of countless lives often overlooked or dismissed by society. The film's treatment of poverty is nuanced, not portrayed as mere circumstance, but as a persistent, structural weight that shapes every decision and interaction. We see how economic hardship limits choices, creates desperation, and fuels a cycle that is difficult to break free from. The camera lingers on small details, unpaid bills, the limited food supply, worn-out clothes, that quietly but insistently highlight these realities without resorting to melodrama. This economic struggle is inextricably linked to race and systemic injustice. The film's setting and characters embody the racialized dimensions of vulnerability, as Jania's predicament is shaped by societal biases and a justice system that often turns a blind eye to people like her. The police negotiation scenes, rather than portraying law enforcement as unequivocal heroes, reveal tensions, misunderstandings, and implicit prejudices. The way Jania is viewed by the authorities and media, through suspicion and stereotype, raises uncomfortable questions about who is deemed worthy of empathy or help in crisis situations. The film exposes these biases with subtlety, avoiding caricature, but laying bare the painful fractures of racial inequality. Mental health is another thread woven into the narrative with sensitivity and care. Jania's emotional state, her moments of breakdown and resilience, are portrayed with honesty and respect. The film avoids stigmatizing language or simplistic explanations. Instead, it invites viewers to witness the complexity of her experience, how trauma, fear, and societal pressures compound in ways that are invisible yet deeply felt. The negotiation scenes become less about the external threat and more about understanding Jania's inner turmoil, showing how mental health crises intersect with social neglect and isolation. What is remarkable is how these themes feel intrinsic to the story rather than imposed upon it. The film's writing and direction resist the temptation to highlight these issues through overt exposition or symbolic gestures. Instead, they emerge naturally from the characters' circumstances, dialogue, and interactions. There is no heavy-handed commentary. The film trusts its audience to discern the connections between Jania's personal ordeal and the broader social dynamics at play. This approach respects both the complexity of the issues and the intelligence of the viewer. The cultural commentary extends beyond race and class to touch on broader questions of empathy, visibility, and human connection in an indifferent world. The title Straw itself evokes the fragile threads that hold people together and how easily those threads can snap under pressure. This metaphor ripples throughout the film's treatment of community, isolation, and the failure of systems designed to protect but often neglect the most vulnerable. The film's mood, quiet, somber, and at times suffocating, mirrors this sense of being caught in the margins, seen yet unseen. In addressing these sensitive topics, Straw avoids easy answers or simplistic moralizing. Instead, it presents a landscape of ambiguity where characters grapple with their roles within flawed systems. The negotiator, police officers, family members, and Jania herself are all portrayed with shades of complexity, highlighting that the challenges are systemic and multifaceted rather than the fault of any one individual. This layered portrayal invites deeper reflection on accountability and the collective responsibility society holds toward its most vulnerable. Ultimately, the film's political and cultural commentary feels urgent yet measured, intimate yet wide-ranging. It is a narrative that acknowledges pain and injustice without losing sight of individual dignity and resilience. By weaving contemporary issues seamlessly into its story, Straw becomes more than just a film. It becomes a mirror held up to the fractures and failures of our time, compelling the audience to look closely and listen carefully to voices often drowned out. Straw unfolds as an emotional journey that quietly but powerfully sinks its hooks into the audience's heart and mind. This isn't a film that seeks to overwhelm with spectacle or melodrama. Instead, it earns its emotional resonance through subtlety, raw honesty, and an unwavering focus on the human cost of its story. The moments that stir the deepest reactions come not from grand gestures, but from intimate, painfully real exchanges and silences that linger long after the screen goes dark. Early on, there is a profound tenderness in the scenes between Jania and her daughter. Their interactions, filled with both hope and fragility, pull at the viewer's empathy. The innocence of the child juxtaposed with the mother's mounting desperation creates a tension that quietly tightens the emotional grip. It's in these small moments, a whispered promise, a fragile smile, a shared glance, that the film plants seeds of connection. Viewers find themselves rooting not just for survival, but for dignity and understanding. As the narrative progresses and the stakes heighten, the emotional tension becomes almost unbearable. The negotiation scenes, stripped of melodrama, deliver shock through their rawness. The vulnerability exposed in Jania's voice, her trembling pleas and flashes of defiance, invite a visceral response. These are not cinematic cliches of breakdowns or outbursts. They are moments of lived trauma, articulated with restraint yet full of wrenching intensity. Audience members can't help but lean in, their breaths held, feeling the claustrophobia and isolation that the film so meticulously builds. Laughter is scarce but poignant when it arrives, often as a brief flicker of relief in otherwise heavy sequences. These fleeting moments humanize the characters and remind viewers of life's persistence, even amidst despair. They provide an emotional rhythm that prevents the experience from becoming overwhelming, making the darker moments hit even harder. The contrast amplifies the emotional texture, creating a rhythm of tension and release that feels authentic and necessary. Tears come naturally, especially as the film's deeper themes surface. The weight of systemic failure, the crushing invisibility faced by Jania, and the harsh judgments imposed by society are conveyed not just through plot, but through the emotional undercurrents that run beneath every interaction. The audience is invited into an empathetic space where personal pain is inseparable from broader social wounds. This duality deepens the emotional impact, transforming Straw into a mirror reflecting both individual and collective suffering. Shock emerges not from unexpected twists, but from the stark, unflinching portrayal of reality. The film does not shy away from showing how quickly hope can unravel and how thin the line is between survival and tragedy. The emotional shocks are moments of brutal honesty, glimpses into the fractures in a world that often refuses to acknowledge them. These shocks linger as echoes, urging viewers to question their own assumptions and the society around them. What makes Straw linger long after the credits is its invitation to reflection and conversation. It doesn't offer neat resolutions or easy comfort. Instead, it holds space for discomfort and complexity, encouraging audiences to wrestle with the questions it raises about justice, empathy, and humanity. The film's emotional honesty opens the door to ongoing dialogue about the issues it portrays, making it a work that benefits from and rewards repeat viewings. Each viewing peels back layers, revealing new nuances in character, dialogue, and theme, making the film not just a story to watch, but an experience to inhabit and revisit. The emotional journey it offers is demanding yet deeply fulfilling, a testament to storytelling that respects its audience's capacity for empathy and critical thought. In its tone and mood, Straw is a haunting, quietly devastating experience that refuses to let go easily. It invites the audience not just to witness, but to feel, to question, and to carry its echoes forward. It is this enduring emotional resonance, woven through moments of tenderness, tension, and raw humanity, that marks the film as unforgettable and profoundly affecting. Straw stakes its ground with a quiet but undeniable presence within the landscape of intense, character-driven thrillers, carving out a distinctive space, both within its genre and Tyler Perry's directorial repertoire. When placed alongside similar films that revolve around hostage scenarios or crisis negotiations, it becomes clear that Straw isn't content to recycle familiar formulas or rely on the genre's usual tropes. Instead, it charts a more intimate, socially conscious course, one that prioritizes emotional depth and systemic critique over high-octane spectacle. Unlike many thrillers that hinge on escalating action sequences and clear-cut antagonists, Straw pivots towards psychological realism and social nuance. The film's restraint in pacing and tension-building sets it apart from genre contemporaries that often demand constant thrills. This slower, more contemplative rhythm invites the audience into a deeply human story, where the stakes feel personal rather than abstract. It's a move that risks alienating viewers expecting conventional suspense, yet rewards those willing to engage with its meditative exploration of trauma and survival. Within the broader genre of hostage dramas, Straw distinguishes itself by shifting the narrative focus from external rescue or conflict to the internal and societal forces that confine the protagonist. This perspective is less about the tactical maneuvers of negotiation and more about the emotional landscapes and systemic pressures shaping the crisis. By centering a single mother from a marginalized community, the film introduces voices and experiences often sidelined or stereotyped in such stories. This choice not only diversifies the genre's thematic reach, but also deepens its emotional resonance. When compared to Tyler Perry's body of work, Straw marks a noticeable evolution in tone and ambition. Perry, known largely for his work in comedy drama and family-centric stories, here embraces a much darker, more intense aesthetic, without losing his signature focus on character complexity and social issues. The film's mood, somber, tense, and reflective, contrasts with the lighter, sometimes melodramatic tones in his earlier projects. This shift signals a willingness to push creative boundaries, tackling weightier themes with subtlety and grit. Moreover, Straw benefits from Perry's intimate knowledge of the cultural and social dynamics it portrays, lending authenticity and urgency that elevate the story beyond mere genre exercise. His direction imbues the film with a grounded realism that stems from lived experience and empathy, creating a work that feels less like a thriller and more like a poignant social commentary wrapped in suspenseful storytelling. This blend of styles is less common in mainstream cinema, positioning Straw as a hybrid that both honors and redefines genre expectations. Visually and narratively, the film refrains from formulaic devices such as predictable plot twists or neatly resolved endings. This refusal to conform enhances its uniqueness, making it stand apart from many genre entries that rely heavily on shock value or sensationalism. The emphasis on ambiguity and character-driven conflict encourages viewers to grapple with complex questions rather than offering easy answers, a hallmark of more mature, thought-provoking cinema. In relation to other films exploring similar themes, such as economic hardship, racial injustice, or mental health crises, Straw feels particularly intimate and focused. Its strength lies in translating broad societal issues into a personal, emotionally charged narrative that invites empathy rather than judgment. This human-centered approach enriches the genre, demonstrating how thriller elements can coexist with social critique and emotional storytelling. In sum, Straw stands as a distinctive entry that both honors and challenges the conventions of its genre and Tyler Perry's filmography. It offers audiences something fresh, a slow-burning, emotionally resonant exploration of crisis and survival that refuses to be easily categorized or dismissed. This complex interplay of genre, theme, and directorial vision creates a film that lingers in the mind and invites reconsideration of what stories thrillers can tell. Straw is a film rich with subtle layers and visual motifs that quietly weave themselves into the narrative fabric, deepening the emotional and thematic resonance without ever overwhelming the story's natural flow. These hidden details function like a second language, silent yet potent, that enrich the viewer's experience and invite closer attention, rewarding those who look beyond the surface. Taraji P. Henson's portrayal of Jania Wilkinson in Straw stands as a masterclass in restrained yet profoundly affecting acting, a performance that refuses the usual theatrics in favor of a deeply internalized, quietly explosive emotional landscape. From the very first moments on screen, Henson embodies a character who carries the weight of the world in ways that are subtle yet unmistakable. This is not a woman who shouts her pain or demands attention. Instead, her exhaustion and despair seep through every micro-expression, every slight movement, and every fragile breath. Her physicality is one of the most compelling aspects of this performance. There's a heaviness in Jania's shoulders, a slump in her stance that immediately communicates the burden she bears. It's not just fatigue, it's a kind of slow erosion of spirit that has settled into her bones. You see it in how she moves through space, often hesitant, sometimes guarded, as though bracing herself against constant, unseen blows. The way she exhales is weighted, almost as if she is perpetually holding back the tidal wave of pressure threatening to engulf her. Her eyes are perhaps the most telling feature, distant, flickering with moments of fierce resolve before dimming again under the shadow of weariness. What Taraji does here is extraordinary because she channels a storm raging beneath a calm surface. Instead of delivering grandiose expressions of grief or anger, she opts for the power of nuance. A fleeting wince when confronted with a mounting bill, a flicker of frustration masked by a forced smile for her daughter's sake. These tiny, almost imperceptible moments are the building blocks of Jania's character. They reveal a woman who is perpetually negotiating between survival and surrender, who must hide her deepest fears while still projecting a semblance of strength. The emotional progression throughout the film is another triumph. Henson navigates Jania's gradual unraveling with remarkable precision. This is not the kind of breakdown Hollywood often portrays with loud sobs or explosive outbursts. Instead, it is a slow, creeping dissolution, conveyed through measured changes in expression, tone, and posture. There's a haunted quality to her transformation, a kind of invisible cracking that's far more disturbing because it feels utterly authentic. When Jania's defenses begin to falter, it happens in the smallest of shifts. A slight tremor in her voice, a faraway gaze, a momentary loss of focus. These moments build cumulatively, creating a portrait of vulnerability that never feels staged or exaggerated. The scenes inside the vault, particularly those shared with Sherri Shepherd, showcase a masterful use of stillness and subtlety. Taraji's performance here is a study in controlled despair. Her voice drops to a near whisper, the softness emphasizing not weakness, but the exhaustion of constant fight. Her eyes don't seek out the camera or the other character. Instead, they wander, reflecting thoughts scattering like broken fragments. This scattered focus creates an intimate window into Jania's fractured state of mind. There's a palpable tension in these scenes. You feel the weight of everything she's trying to hold back, the internal struggle between breaking and persevering. Henson doesn't just act like someone breaking down. She makes you live the experience of being broken, of having life's relentless pressures chip away at identity and hope. This internalized fury is what elevates Taraji's performance beyond mere acting. It's a fierce, quiet rebellion against the circumstances that confine Jania. Even in moments of near collapse, there is a steel beneath the fragility, a stubborn spark of survival that flickers in her eyes and in her clenched fists. The balance she strikes between vulnerability and strength is what makes Jania not only believable, but deeply relatable. Henson's portrayal resists easy categorization. It neither romanticizes nor victimizes, but presents a human being in all her flawed, resilient complexity. In sum, Taraji P. Henson's work here is a layered exploration of endurance, pain, and unspoken rage. Her performance demands close attention because its power lies in what is not said. Those small gestures, those quiet moments of pain and defiance that reveal the soul of a woman navigating a world that often seems indifferent to her suffering. It's a performance that lingers long after the credits roll, inviting viewers to bear witness to the quiet heroism of simply surviving. Sherri Shepherd's portrayal of Nicole in Straw is a masterstroke of subtlety and emotional depth, serving as a vital counterbalance to Taraji P. Henson's intense and internalized Jania. While Shepherd is widely recognized for her comedic talents, here she steps away from humor to inhabit a character defined by quiet strength and compassionate presence. Nicole isn't a loud voice or an active rescuer. Rather, she is the empathetic anchor in Jania's storm, someone who offers a space where pain can be shared without fear of judgment or dismissal. What Shepherd brings to Nicole is a remarkable ability to embody the power of listening, a quality often overlooked but central to the film's emotional core. In a story marked by isolation, suspicion, and systemic indifference, Nicole's role as a patient, non-intrusive confidant stands out profoundly. Shepherd's performance never lapses into the temptation to save or overshadow Jania. Instead, she leans in physically and emotionally, crafting an intimate atmosphere where vulnerability can surface naturally. Her steady gaze, unwavering and filled with genuine concern, anchors scenes that might otherwise feel heavy with despair. This act of simply being present, of holding space for another's pain, is portrayed with such sincerity that it becomes a quiet act of rebellion against the world's harshness. Throughout the film, Shepherd's Nicole is less about action and more about emotional resonance. The subtle weariness that underlies her performance suggests a woman who has endured her own struggles, creating a sense of shared understanding between her and Jania. This shared history, or at least shared empathy, breeds authenticity into their interactions. Nicole is not a detached counselor or a deus ex machina. She is a real person with scars of her own, someone who listens because she knows what it means to carry pain silently. The dynamic between Nicole and Jania reaches its emotional peak in the vault scenes, which serve as the film's beating heart. Here, Shepherd's performance blends wariness, tenderness, and a protective maternal instinct that transcends simple friendship. The relationship feels organic, equal parts sisterhood, motherhood, and quiet solidarity. Nicole's patience with Jania's fractures, her refusal to push too hard yet never letting go, creates a tension that is both delicate and profound. Shepard's nuanced gestures, a reassuring touch, a soft nod, a measured tone, convey volumes without needing explicit dialogue. This scene also reveals Shepard's remarkable skill in maintaining emotional clarity under restraint. There is no grand speech or dramatic confrontation, only the steady rhythm of mutual acknowledgement and understanding. Nicole's role is to mirror Jania's pain back to her, not to fix it, and Shepard accomplishes this with a grace that deepens the audience's connection to both characters. In these moments, the film transcends the specific story of hardship to explore universal themes of human connection, trust, and the power of simply being seen. Shepard's presence throughout the film is a reminder that strength is not always loud or heroic. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and deeply human. By allowing her performance to breathe, and by embracing the power of listening, she provides an emotional lifeline, not only for Jania, but for the audience as well. This subtle yet potent portrayal enriches Straw's narrative tapestry, giving it a softness and resilience that might otherwise be absent in such a harrowing tale. In essence, Sherri Shepard's Nicole is a beacon of empathy and stability in a world that often feels indifferent. Through her quiet watchfulness and heartfelt presence, she elevates the film's emotional stakes, inviting viewers into a space of shared pain and healing that is as rare as it is necessary. Her performance underscores the idea that sometimes the most profound support comes not from grand gestures, but from the simple, courageous act of listening and standing alongside someone in their darkest hour. One of the most poignant recurring motifs is the image of the straw itself. Fragile, thin, almost insignificant on its own, yet holding weight as a metaphor for resilience and vulnerability. The film often frames Jania's world through objects and moments that echo this symbolism. The delicate threads holding together her life, the fragile connections with her daughter, the tenuous grip on hope amid overwhelming odds. These visual cues are not overt, but emerge through careful framing. Close-ups on worn fabric, a single straw caught in a breeze, the subtle cracking of walls or worn surfaces. Each instance reflects the precariousness of her situation, emphasizing how easily the smallest pressure can cause everything to unravel. Color plays a significant role as well, with muted, earthy tones dominating much of the film's palette. The palette mirrors the film's tone, somber, restrained, grounded in reality, but also symbolizes the weight of the environment pressing down on the characters. Occasional flashes of brighter colors, like the child's clothing or a vivid patch of sky, offer fleeting moments of hope or innocence that punctuate the narrative's heaviness. This interplay between muted and bright colors creates a visual rhythm that parallels the emotional highs and lows, guiding the audience through Jania's psychological landscape. Lighting is another tool used with intention, often contrasting the harsh artificial glare of interrogation rooms or streetlights with the softer, warmer light in quieter, more intimate moments. Shadows loom large in many scenes, enveloping characters in darkness or partial concealment, which visually represents the uncertainty, fear, and isolation that permeate the story. These shadowy spaces feel almost like extensions of Jania's mental state, claustrophobic, confusing, and filled with unseen threats. The subtle shifts in lighting thus serve as emotional signposts, signaling changes in mood and revealing inner turmoil without a word spoken. Mirrors and reflections appear at key points, offering visual metaphors for self-examination and fractured identity. Jania is often shown glimpsing herself in reflective surfaces, sometimes distorted, sometimes fragmented, suggesting the conflict between who she is, who she must be, and who the world perceives her to be. These reflections deepen the audience's understanding of her psychological complexity and the layered pressures she endures. Sound design, while not strictly visual, complements these motifs by incorporating ambient noises that underscore the film's atmosphere. The distant hum of traffic, the creak of a door, the quiet rustle of straw or leaves. These sounds ground the narrative in a tangible reality, but also emphasize isolation and tension. Moments of silence are used deliberately, amplifying the emotional weight of scenes by allowing space for the characters' pain and uncertainty to resonate. Subtle visual storytelling also extends to the spatial dynamics within scenes. The way characters are framed in relation to each other, often separated by barriers like windows, doors, or physical distance, visually conveys the emotional and societal divides between them. This spatial symbolism reinforces the theme of isolation and the gulf between individual experience and institutional response. For example, the negotiator's presence on the other side of a window pane isn't just physical, but symbolic of the emotional and systemic distance that Jania must confront. Objects carry meaning too. A worn-out pair of shoes, a frayed backpack, a faded photograph. These items ground the story in tangible reality while carrying emotional weight. Reminders of lost security, enduring love, or past trauma. They become silent witnesses to the characters' struggles, inviting the audience to piece together history and emotion through small, intimate details. In all, these deeper layers and motifs function as the film's emotional and thematic undercurrent. They transform Straw from a straightforward crisis story into a textured meditation on fragility, resilience, and invisibility. By weaving these visual and symbolic threads throughout the narrative, the film achieves a subtle poetry that lingers beyond the immediate plot, inviting viewers not only to watch, but to feel and interpret, to find meaning in the spaces between words and actions. Straw isn't positioned as part of a series or franchise, but its narrative and thematic layers suggest it could easily serve as a foundational entry in a larger conversation or cinematic universe centered around systemic struggles and personal resilience. Were it to be extended into a series, the film's deeply personal and intimate approach would likely shape an overarching narrative that favors character-driven explorations over episodic thrills or conventional sequel structures. Imagining Straw as part of a larger narrative, it would stand as the origin story, an unflinching portrayal of an individual caught at the intersection of personal hardship and societal indifference. The film lays the groundwork by immersing viewers in Jania's world, not just through her immediate crisis, but through the subtle social and emotional forces that have shaped her circumstances. This foundation would enable future installments to expand outward, examining other facets of the world she inhabits. The systemic failures, the community dynamics, the ripple effects on those around her. The film's tone and mood suggest that subsequent chapters would continue the delicate balance between intimate human drama and broader social critique. Instead of escalating into traditional action or suspense tropes, a series continuation might delve deeper into the characters' inner lives, unearthing hidden traumas, forging unexpected alliances, and confronting institutional power structures. Each episode or sequel could spotlight different perspectives, adding complexity and nuance to the overarching narrative without sacrificing the emotional core. From a storytelling perspective, Straw establishes a layered universe ripe for further exploration. Its deliberate pacing and focus on character psychology imply that any continuation would maintain a similar contemplative style, inviting audiences to reflect on each development rather than rushing through plot points. The film's subtle use of motifs, visual symbolism, and atmospheric storytelling would likely become recurring touchstones, tying together disparate narrative threads across a larger arc. If viewed through the lens of historical or social realism, though not a historical film per se, Straw immerses the audience in a time and place that feel palpably authentic. The details of setting, dialogue, and character behavior reflect contemporary realities with a specificity that grounds the story firmly in the present day. This immersion is not about grand historical events, but the lived experiences of individuals navigating systemic inequities and personal hardship. The film's accuracy shines in its portrayal of socioeconomic pressures, the psychological toll of crisis, and the often fraught interactions between individuals and institutions. Its depiction of these dynamics avoids sensationalism, instead offering a nuanced, empathetic perspective that resonates with real-world struggles. The authenticity extends to the emotional truths conveyed, how desperation can coexist with hope, how love can be a lifeline even in darkness, and how resilience often emerges in the smallest acts. Were Straw to be contextualized as a snapshot of contemporary social reality, its immersive quality would stem from the director's commitment to truthfulness in tone and detail. The film's environments, from cramped apartments to sterile negotiation rooms, are rendered with a naturalism that invites viewers to step fully into the character's world. This attention to detail cultivates a sense of immediacy and intimacy, making the narrative's stakes feel urgent and deeply human. In both imagined continuations and its present form, Straw functions as a poignant mirror to current social realities, an invitation to understand, empathize, and question. Its strength lies not just in what is shown, but in what it suggests, the interconnectedness of personal and systemic stories, and the ongoing nature of struggle and survival. This layered approach to narrative and setting enriches the film's impact, opening pathways for dialogue and deeper engagement well beyond the screen. Straw operates within a production framework that clearly maximizes its budget to achieve a high-quality cinematic experience. While exact budget figures may not be blockbuster level, the film's careful allocation of resources is evident in the polished visual style, intimate set designs, and strong performances. Rather than relying on expensive special effects or sprawling locations, the production focuses on creating an authentic and immersive environment that feels lived in and emotionally grounded. This economy in design and scope aligns perfectly with the film's tone, emphasizing character and atmosphere over spectacle. The production quality reflects a thoughtful balance between financial constraints and creative ambition. Lighting, sound design, and cinematography punch well above what the budget might suggest, with meticulous attention to detail that elevates the storytelling. Scenes feel carefully crafted rather than rushed or cheapened, and the choice of locations, such as the confined interiors of apartments or stark negotiation rooms, adds to the claustrophobic tension without extravagant expenditure. This restrained but precise use of budget creates a film that feels sincere and compelling, demonstrating how resourcefulness can translate into emotional power on screen. From a financial standpoint, Straw's box office performance is shaped by a mix of factors, including marketing reach, target audience, and distribution strategy. As a film that leans heavily on social realism and emotional drama, its appeal skews toward viewers interested in character-driven stories and contemporary issues rather than mass-market entertainment. This niche positioning often means moderate theatrical returns, but strong engagement in streaming and digital platforms, where audiences seek thoughtful, meaningful content. Marketing for Straw was carefully targeted, focusing on platforms and channels that resonate with its core demographic, viewers drawn to stories about resilience, motherhood, and systemic challenges. This strategy supports a steady word-of-mouth momentum, emphasizing emotional connection over flashy promotions. While the film may not have dominated box office charts, its presence on streaming services like Netflix offers a broader, more accessible avenue for discovery, especially among audiences who appreciate Tyler Perry's signature blend of social commentary and heartfelt drama. Audience reception plays a crucial role in shaping the film's financial trajectory. Early responses highlight the film's emotional depth and strong performances, which generate organic buzz that transcends traditional marketing. This positive reception often translates into sustained viewership on digital platforms, contributing to the film's longevity and cultural footprint beyond initial box office numbers. Where can audiences watch Straw? The film was released on June 6, 2025, primarily in the United States, with availability on Netflix, ensuring wide accessibility. This streaming platform release aligns well with contemporary viewing habits, allowing the film to reach diverse audiences who might seek out compelling, socially conscious cinema from the comfort of their homes. In addition to streaming, Straw may also be available through digital rental services, offering flexibility for viewers who prefer on-demand options. Overall, the film's budget, production quality, and distribution reflect a modern approach to independent, character-driven storytelling, leveraging financial prudence, creative focus, and digital platforms to carve out a meaningful space in the crowded media landscape.